The paper cut stung as I pulled the quarterly compliance report from my filing cabinet. A single drop of blood landed on the folded note hidden between pages 47 and 48. My blood ran cold as I read the handwriting I knew so well. Thursday, 3 p.m. Conference Room Alpha. Start with regulatory concerns. Mention client complaints. Stress liability risks twice. End with immediate termination. Effective today. At the bottom, underlined 3 times. Veil finally gone. Promotion secured. I stared at Lucien Drawn's distinctive scrawl. The same handwriting that had signed birthday cards and congratulations over our 5 years working together at Sterling Vance Financial. Now it mapped out my professional destruction with military precision. The 32nd floor of our Canary Wharf tower hummed with late Tuesday energy, but I felt completely alone. Rain streaked the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Thames, matching the storm brewing in my chest. This was betrayal disguised as business procedure. Lucien walked past my glass office, his Italian leather shoes clicking against marble floors. He caught sight of the note in my trembling hands. His confident smile faltered for just a moment before transforming into something colder. He stepped inside without knocking, closing the door behind him with deliberate care. "That's confidential, Vale," he said, voice low but sharp as a blade. His eyes gleamed with something between triumph and warning. "Confidential?" I whispered, holding up the damning evidence. "This is about destroying my career." He stepped closer, straightening his Seville row tie. "London finance isn't charity, Corin. Some people get handed opportunities. Others take what they deserve." His accent carried that familiar public school arrogance. "You've had your run as golden boy. Thursday will be easier if you call in sick. Save yourself the public spectacle in front of the whole compliance team." The threat hung between us like smoke. He walked away, leaving me with the echo of 5 years of friendship crumbling into calculated betrayal. I watched Lucien stride across the trading floor to Céline Marchand's corner office. Through the glass walls, I saw them speak in hushed tones. Her sleek blonde hair caught the light as she nodded, occasionally glancing toward my office with those predatory green eyes. Céline, our head of legal, had always been calculating. But seeing her lean forward, studying what looked like documents, confirmed my worst suspicions. This wasn't just Lucien's ambition. This was a coordinated strike with legal backing. She caught me watching and offered a thin smile, raising her coffee cup in a mock toast. The gesture sent ice through my veins. They weren't just planning to fire me. They were celebrating it in advance. I pulled my blinds shut, heart pounding against my ribs. 2 of the people I'd trusted most at Sterling Vance had been plotting my downfall. How long had they been planning this? What had I done to deserve such calculated cruelty? The answers would have to wait. Right now, I needed to understand exactly what I was facing. That night, sleep came in fragments. I lay in my Docklands flat, staring at the ceiling while London's lights painted shadows across the walls. My mind kept returning to the early days when Lucien had joined our compliance team. I'd been the one to train him, showing him the intricate web of financial regulations that kept Sterling Vance operating within legal bounds. We'd worked late nights together, shared drinks at Borough Market after particularly brutal audit weeks. I'd even recommended him for the COO position when the previous executive retired. His charm and quick learning had impressed everyone, especially me. The signs had been there, though. The way he'd started interrupting my presentations to clients. How he'd begun scheduling meetings with key stakeholders without including me. Those subtle comments when my project succeeded. Corin got lucky with the timing of that regulatory change. I dismissed it as normal workplace competition. In Canary Wharf's towers, ambition was currency. But now I understand. Lucien hadn't wanted friendly competition. He'd wanted total elimination of threats to his advancement. Wednesday morning arrived gray and bitter. I reached my office by 7, 2 hours before the usual chaos began. The 32nd floor felt different in the early quiet, almost sacred. I needed allies, and I knew exactly where to start. "Morning, Corin," greeted Tobias Wellesley from IT security. His thick Manchester accent always sounded out of place among the public school vowels that dominated our floor. "You're here early. Need a favor, Toby," I said, keeping my voice casual. "I think I may have accidentally deleted some important emails from last quarter. Regulatory audit trail stuff. Any chance of recovery?" His eyebrows rose behind wire-rimmed glasses. Your deleted items should keep everything for 60 days. What specific correspondence? I slid him a piece of paper with Lucien's and Celine's names. Internal discussions about the European Banking Authority compliance reviews. Need to verify some timeline issues. Toby hesitated, fingers drumming against his keyboard. This is a bit unusual, mate, but for regulatory purposes. He nodded slowly. Give me an hour. I'll send whatever I find to your secure partition. At 9 sharp, I accessed my secure folder. Toby had outdone himself. Dozens of emails between Lucien and Celine stretched back 3 months, painting a picture of systematic manipulation that made my stomach turn. Thursday's termination is approved by Alaric. Read one message from 2 weeks ago. HR has reviewed the fabricated performance issues and signed off. Corin won't see this coming. Another, from Celine. The Harrington Coil account reassignment is key. Once Corin's gone, Lucien's the obvious choice to handle their portfolio. The most damning came from just last week. Legal documentation complete. We've created enough performance concerns on paper to justify immediate dismissal. The board announcement for Lucien's promotion will go out Friday morning. My hands shook as I read their casual discussion of destroying my reputation. They'd fabricated client complaints, buried positive feedback, and scheduled my professional execution before I even knew I was under attack. But they'd made one crucial mistake. Every email was time-stamped, dated, and digitally signed. This wasn't just a conspiracy. This was documented fraud. I spent the next hour creating an insurance policy. Every project file, every client commendation, every piece of evidence showing my actual performance got copied to an encrypted drive. Screenshots of the damning emails joined photographs of my current work status. The irony wasn't lost on me. My obsessive attention to detail, the same trait that made me excellent at compliance work, now served as my salvation. Lucien and Celine might have legal backing, but I had something more powerful: the truth, meticulously documented. I encrypted everything with military-grade security, storing copies in 3 separate locations. If Thursday's ambush proceeded as planned, I'd be ready with evidence that would destroy their narrative. Sterling Vance prided itself on integrity. Our marketing materials proclaimed trust through transparency across every client presentation. If Alaric Dauvain, our silver-haired CEO, truly believed in those values, the evidence would speak for itself. But first, I needed to ensure someone powerful would be listening when I presented it. The Berkeley Square Private Club felt like stepping back in time. Dark wood paneling, leather armchairs, and the quiet murmur of London's elite conducting business over afternoon tea. I'd called Harrington Coil that morning, requesting an urgent meeting about his account. At 72, Harrington commanded respect throughout European finance. His investment firm controlled billions, and Sterling Vance handled a substantial portion of his wealth management. His weathered face showed surprise as I presented the evidence. Lucien claimed he's been managing my portfolio. His Scottish accent carried decades of boardroom authority. For the past 2 months, according to these emails, he told clients that I was being reassigned due to performance issues. Harrington's gray eyes hardened as he reviewed the documentation. Young man, I specifically requested you handle my affairs after that brilliant work on the derivatives compliance issue. If Lucien Dron thinks he can manipulate my account assignments. He paused, setting down his teacup with deliberate precision. What do you need from me, Corin? Harrington's response exceeded my expectations. If Vale goes, I pull my holdings, he stated simply. But his next words transformed my defensive strategy into something far more powerful. I'll make some calls, he continued, his Scottish brogue carrying a quiet menace. Banking is a small world, especially at our level. Lucien's name will be known throughout London by tomorrow evening. The implications hit me like lightning. Harrington wasn't just offering support. He was promising to weaponize his network against anyone who threatened me. In the rarefied air of Canary Wharf finance, reputation was everything. A word from Harrington Coil could open doors or seal them shut permanently. Just the truth, I said carefully. Nothing more than what actually happened. His smile carried decades of corporate warfare. Truth has a way of spreading quickly when properly motivated. By Thursday afternoon, every major firm in London will know exactly what kind of man Lucien Dron really is. I left the Berkeley Square Club with my first powerful ally secured. But the best weapon remained Lucien's own arrogance. Thursday morning brought unseasonably warm weather to London. I arrived at Sterling Vance early, setting up a small recording device in my jacket pocket. The plan was simple. Let Lucien hang himself with his own words. He found me by the lifts, practically glowing with anticipation. Ready for your big day, Vale? His smile was pure predator. Looking forward to it. I replied evenly. You know, he said, voice dropping to conspiratorial tones. I almost feel bad about this. But business is business. You've had a good run, but it's time for fresh leadership. Someone who understands modern finance. He leaned closer, unable to resist the moment. The beautiful part is how perfectly legal it all looks. Performance issues, client complaints, liability concerns. Alaric will never question it. Impressive planning, I said, letting him continue. 3 months of careful documentation. Celine handled the legal framework brilliantly. Your termination looks completely justified. He checked his Patek Philippe watch. 2 hours, and your Sterling Vance career ends forever. Hope you've updated your CV. The recording device captured every word, every inflection of his arrogance. Lucien had just confessed to conspiracy and fraud, gift wrap for the tribunal that would decide his fate. At 2:30, my phone buzzed with a message from reception. Conference room Alpha has flooding issues. Your 3 o'clock meeting has been moved to the glass boardroom. My blood ran cold. The glass boardroom sat in the center of our floor, surrounded by transparent walls that offered no privacy. Every employee could watch proceedings from their desks. Celine had escalated their plan from private humiliation to public spectacle. I gathered my materials, including the encrypted folder containing all evidence. The walk across the trading floor felt endless. Colleagues tried to avoid eye contact, but I saw the mixture of curiosity and sympathy in their faces. Word had somehow spread that something significant was happening. The glass boardroom sat empty except for 3 figures. Celine Marchand with her legal documents, Odette Frayne from HR with her termination paperwork, and Lucien Drawn wearing his victory smile. They positioned chairs to ensure my back would face the entire office during my professional execution. But they'd made another mistake. Glass walls worked both ways. I entered the glass boardroom at exactly 3 o'clock. Through the transparent walls, I could see the entire compliance team at their desks, pretending to work while stealing glances at our meeting. Some looked sympathetic. Others appeared curious about the drama unfolding. Celine sat at the head of the mahogany table, her legal documents arranged with surgical precision. Odette from HR occupied the chair nearest the door, standard protocol for termination meetings. Lucien had chosen the seat that gave him the best view of my humiliation. They'd left me the chair with its back to the glass wall, ensuring my reaction would be visible to everyone. But I chose a different seat, one that faced the door and gave me a clear view of anyone entering or leaving. Corin, please sit here, Celine said, pointing to their chosen chair with a voice like polished steel. I'm comfortable here, thanks, I replied, placing my own folder on the table. Since we're all about transparency today, Lucien's confident expression flickered slightly. Celine's green eyes narrowed. They'd expected compliance, submission, defeat. Instead, I'd already disrupted their carefully choreographed performance. The real show was about to begin. Celine opened her leather portfolio with theatrical precision. Corin, we've called this meeting to address serious concerns about your performance and compliance with Sterling Vance protocols. Her voice carried the cold authority of legal certainty. Through the glass walls, I could see colleagues turning to watch our meeting with undisguised interest. Over the past quarter, we've documented several instances of inadequate client service, missed regulatory deadlines, and what can only be described as careless handling of sensitive financial information. She slid a thick document across the table. These performance issues create significant liability exposure for the firm. After careful review with HR and senior management, we've concluded that your employment must be terminated, effective immediately. Lucien leaned back in his chair, trying to hide his satisfaction, but his eyes gleamed with triumph. This was the moment he'd orchestrated for months. Odette from HR cleared her throat. Your final paycheck, benefits information, and non-disclosure agreement are all prepared. We'll need your access cards and company devices before you leave the building. The execution was flawless, precise, and completely fabricated. If I'd been the broken man they expected, it would have worked perfectly. The glass boardroom door opened without warning. Harrington Coyle walked in, followed by his executive assistant, both wearing expressions of grim determination. The trading floor beyond fell silent as employees recognized one of our most important clients. "Mr. Coyle," Celine stammered, her composed mask slipping. "This is a private personnel meeting." "Yes, about Vale's performance," Harrington replied, his Scottish accent cutting through the air like Highland steel. "Since my portfolio represents 12% of Sterling Vance's managed assets, I thought my perspective might be relevant." Lucien had gone pale as Seville row cloth. This wasn't part of their script. "We appreciate your business, but employment decisions are internal matters," Celine said, trying to regain control. "Indeed," Harrington said, taking the empty chair beside me. "Which is why I'm curious about reports that Vale has been providing inadequate service to my accounts. Strange, considering I've never filed a complaint." He pulled out his phone, scrolling through messages. "In fact, I have emails praising his work as recently as last week. Would you like me to read them aloud?" The atmosphere in the glass boardroom shifted dramatically. What had been my trial was becoming Celine and Lucien's interrogation. Lucien found his voice first, though it came out higher than his usual confident tone. "Mr. Coyle, there are performance issues beyond client service. Internal compliance matters that you wouldn't be aware of, such as—" Harrington's gray eyes were steel. "Regulatory deadline management, internal documentation standards, team collaboration." Lucien's words trailed off as he realized how weak they sounded. "Fascinating," Harrington said drily. "Because I've personally worked with Corin on several regulatory compliance projects. His attention to detail saved my firm from potential penalties during the European Banking Authority review." Celine tried to salvage the situation. "While we value your input, Mr. Coyle, these decisions involve confidential personnel information that we cannot discuss with external parties." "External?" Harrington's eyebrows rose. "When 12% of your managed assets walk out that door if Vale is terminated, I'd hardly call myself external." The threat hung in the air like smoke. Through the glass walls, I could see employees pretending to work while obviously listening to every word. Some had given up pretense entirely, openly watching our confrontation. Lucien's carefully planned execution was crumbling before his eyes. The boardroom door opened again. This time, Alaric Dauvain entered with the quiet authority that had built Sterling Vance from a small investment firm into a Canary Wharf powerhouse. His silver hair was perfectly styled, his charcoal suit immaculate. Behind him walked Odette Frayne, carrying a different folder than the termination papers she'd brought earlier. "I received some interesting calls this morning," Alaric said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Harrington, thank you for bringing these concerns to my attention." Celine's face went rigid. "Sir, we were handling a routine personnel matter." "Routine?" Alaric's pale blue eyes swept the room. "Terminating a senior compliance officer without board approval? That seems unusual." He took the remaining chair at the head of the table. "I've been reviewing the documentation submitted to justify this action. Quite thorough work, Celine. Almost too thorough." Lucien shifted uncomfortably. The confidence that had carried him through months of planning was evaporating under Alaric's scrutiny. "Perhaps, Corin, you'd like to share your perspective on these performance issues?" I opened my folder calmly. "I'd be happy to, sir. Starting with this." I placed Lucien's handwritten note in the center of the table. The small bloodstain from my paper cut had darkened to brown, but his distinctive handwriting remained perfectly clear. "Thursday, 3 p.m. Conference Room Alpha. Start with regulatory concerns. Mention client complaints. Stress liability risks twice. End with immediate termination. Effective today. Vale finally gone. Promotion secured." Alaric studied the note with the same intensity he brought to merger documents. "Interesting planning document, Lucien. Care to explain?" "That's not mine," Lucien said quickly. "Corin must have written it to frame me. It's obviously fabricated." "The handwriting analysis will be interesting," Alaric replied evenly. "Along with the paper's origin. Our security cameras should show who had access to the quarterly files where it was discovered." Celine tried to redirect. "Sir, regardless of this note, we have documented performance issues that justify termination." "Yes," Alaric said, opening Odette's folder. "I've reviewed every complaint, every missed deadline, every client concern cited in your documentation. Curious timing. They're all dated within the past month. His pale eyes fixed on Lucien. Just after the COO evaluation period began, Lucien's composure finally cracked completely. This is ridiculous. That handwriting could be anyone's. You can't base employment decisions on forged documents. I pulled out my phone, setting it on the table. Would you prefer audio evidence? The color drained from his face as I pressed play. His voice filled the glass boardroom with crystal clarity. 3 months of careful documentation. Celine handled the legal framework brilliantly. Your termination looks completely justified. The recording continued with his confession about fabricated performance issues and his certainty that Alaric would never question their evidence. I recorded this conversation at 8:15 this morning, I said quietly, in full compliance with our employee handbook regarding workplace monitoring. Celine's hands were trembling slightly as she tried to maintain her composure. Through the glass walls, I could see the entire trading floor had abandoned any pretense of working. They were witnessing the collapse of a carefully constructed conspiracy. Lucien stared at the phone like it had materialized from his worst nightmare. Celine made one desperate attempt to salvage their plan. Audio recordings can be edited, manipulated. This proves nothing without proper authentication. She opened her own folder with shaking hands. We have documented complaints from team members about Corin's performance. Multiple witnesses to his inadequate work. Alaric accepted the papers, scanning them with his characteristic thoroughness. His expression grew increasingly skeptical as he read. These are interesting, Celine. 7 complaints about Vale's work, all filed within 3 weeks. All from employees who report directly to Lucien. He looked up sharply. Before this month, Vale's personnel file showed no performance issues whatsoever. 5 years of stellar reviews. Harrington leaned forward. I find it remarkable that an employee can go from exemplary to incompetent so quickly, almost like someone orchestrated a campaign to create evidence. The timing does seem convenient, Alaric agreed, especially since the COO position evaluation began 4 weeks ago. Celine's legal training kicked in. Performance issues can escalate quickly under stress. The COO evaluation period may have created pressure that revealed existing problems. But her voice lacked conviction. The walls were closing in around their conspiracy. Lucien snapped. The pressure of watching his carefully planned coup collapse finally broke his composure entirely. This is insane, he shouted, jumping to his feet so forcefully that his chair toppled backward. I've done everything right. Worked harder than anyone. Played by every rule. Built relationships with the right people. His face flushed red as months of suppressed resentment poured out. But it's never enough because perfect Corin Vale is always there. Getting credit for work I contribute to, stealing opportunities that should go to people who actually deserve them. The glass boardroom had gone completely silent except for Lucien's voice growing louder and more desperate. I've earned this promotion. I've put in the hours, learned from the best, made the right connections. But no, Golden Boy Vale gets handed everything while the rest of us have to fight for scraps. He turned on me, his polished facade completely shattered. You don't even want it. You've never shown ambition, never fought for advancement. Success just falls into your lap, while people like me get overlooked again and again. The entire trading floor could hear every word through the glass walls. Lucien had just confessed to conspiracy in front of dozens of witnesses. Alaric stood slowly, his movements deliberate and final. Lucien drawn, your employment with Sterling Vance is terminated immediately. Security will escort you to collect personal items under supervision. You can't do this. Lucien protested, but his voice had lost all authority. I followed company procedures. I documented legitimate performance concerns. Celine approved everything. Conspiracy to commit fraud is not company procedure, Alaric replied coldly. He turned to Celine, whose face had gone ashen. Ms. Marchand, you're suspended pending a full investigation into your role in this matter. Through the glass walls, I watched security guards approaching the boardroom. The entire floor was watching Lucien's professional destruction with the same fascination they'd expected to see mine. This isn't over, Lucien hissed as the guards reached the door. You think you've won, but I have connections throughout London. I'll land somewhere better than this place. Harrington Coyle smiled thinly. We'll see about that. As security led Lucien away, his threats echoing across the trading floor, I realized the first phase of my counterattack was complete. But the real justice was yet to come. After Lucien's dramatic exit, I delivered the killing blow. From my encrypted folder, I produced evidence I'd saved for last. Screenshots of Lucien's private communications with competitors, sharing confidential Sterling Vance client information in exchange for promises of future employment. This is corporate espionage, I said quietly, sliding the documents to Alaric. He's been shopping client data to Meridian Capital and Blackwater Financial for 3 months. Alaric's expression turned to stone as he reviewed the evidence. Harrington leaned over to examine the documents, his weathered face darkening with each page. My portfolio information is in here, Harrington said, his Scottish accent thick with anger. Private investment strategies, risk assessments, confidential merger discussions. Industrial espionage carries criminal penalties, Alaric said, reaching for his phone, along with civil liability that could bankrupt him personally. But Harrington's next words sealed Lucien's fate more effectively than any legal action. I'll make sure every major firm in Europe knows about this by the close of business today. Banking is built on trust, and Lucien Dron has proven he has none. The implication was clear. Harrington's network spanned continents. One word from him would make Lucien unemployable throughout the financial industry. Word spread through London's financial district faster than market rumors. By Thursday evening, Lucien's name was toxic across Canary Wharf. Harrington's network had branded him as untrustworthy, vindictive, and dangerous to corporate security. I learned about his job-hunting struggles through industry contacts. His first interview, at Blackwater Financial, ended abruptly when they discovered his role in the Sterling Vance scandal. Meridian Capital rescinded their offer before he arrived for his appointment. Smaller firms wouldn't even take his calls. Recruiters who had once courted him for prestigious positions now laughed when his name appeared on their screens. The same networking connections he'd cultivated so carefully had become instruments of his destruction. Within a week, Lucien Dron had gone from rising corporate star to unemployable pariah. Every door in London finance had slammed shut, bolted by Harrington's influence and secured by his own documented betrayal. His arrogance had become his downfall. The man who thought he could manipulate corporate politics discovered that reputation, once lost, was nearly impossible to rebuild in London's tight-knit financial community. Alaric offered me Lucien's former position, but I declined. Instead, I proposed something unprecedented: Chief Integrity Officer, a new board-level position dedicated to preventing the kind of systematic manipulation that had nearly destroyed my career. Sterling Vance needs someone watching the watchers, I explained in his corner office overlooking the Thames. Someone who understands how easy it is to fabricate performance issues, manipulate documentation, and abuse corporate procedures. Alaric nodded slowly. The board would need convincing. A new executive position requires significant justification. The Lucien situation cost us 12% of managed assets and nearly resulted in criminal espionage charges, I replied. Prevention is cheaper than crisis management. Within 2 weeks, the board unanimously approved the position. Sterling Vance became the first major financial firm with a dedicated integrity officer, someone whose sole responsibility was ensuring that corporate politics never again threatened employee welfare or company security. My new office occupied the corner of the 33rd floor, with glass walls overlooking both the Thames and the trading floor below. Symbolic and practical, I could watch everything while remaining visible to everyone. The irony wasn't lost on me. Lucien's attempt to destroy my career had elevated me beyond anything I'd originally imagined. 6 months later, my assistant forwarded a mid-level compliance officer application to my desk. The name at the top made me pause. Lucien Dron. His once impressive CV now showed 6 months of unemployment, a gap that screamed desperation in London's competitive finance market. His application was professionally written but pathetic. References from minor firms he'd never worked for, skills inflated beyond recognition, experience fabricated to hide his disgrace. The man who had once orchestrated my destruction was now begging for a position 3 levels below what he'd held. I opened my desk drawer and retrieved the stamp I'd commissioned for exactly this moment. Red ink, official Sterling Vance letterhead, brutal in its simplicity, rejected, not fit for employment. The stamp came down with satisfying finality across Lucien's application. I added a handwritten note in the margin. All future applications from this candidate will receive identical treatment. See Vale, Chief Integrity Officer. I leaned back in my leather chair, looking out over the Thames where London's lights reflected like scattered diamonds. Somewhere in this city, Lucien Dron was probably checking his email, hoping for a response to his desperate job application. He'd get his response, but not the one he wanted. Every door he tried to open would lead back to me. Every opportunity he pursued would cross my desk. I whispered to the empty office, "Now every future of yours passes through my hands."